Tonight, we're diving into a story that's unfolding right now, one that could have ripple effects across the globe and touch nearly every aspect of our daily lives. It's a development that could impact nearly everything you buy, from the groceries in your cart to the electronics in your pocket. The latest front in the US-China rivalry isn't a battlefield in the traditional sense, but the world's ports, the arteries of global commerce, where goods flow in and out, connecting continents and economies. Washington has threatened to impose massive new fees on Chinese ships entering U.S. waters, a move that sent shockwaves through the shipping industry. Beijing, in turn, quickly fired back with its own threats, escalating tensions between the world's two largest economies. This isn't just about political posturing, it's a high-stakes conflict that could reshape the very foundations of global trade, with consequences that reach far beyond governments and boardrooms, affecting consumers everywhere. The U.S. move specifically targeted China's dominance in shipbuilding, aiming to curb its influence. But the situation escalated rapidly, rattling the shipping industry and sending shockwaves through financial markets. These ships aren't just carrying cargo, they're transporting the clothes you wear, the electronics you rely on, and even the food you put on your table. The supply chains that keep store shelves stocked are at stake. Any disruption to this delicate system means higher costs for everyone, from families at the checkout counter to businesses trying to keep up with demand. Prices could rise, and shortages could become more common. The big question now, is this just a tough negotiation tactic, or are we witnessing the opening moves of a trade war that could leave us all paying more for everyday goods? Our interconnected world relies on seamless global trade, but as this standoff shows, the system is more fragile and vulnerable than it appears on the surface. The proposed fees and China's swift retaliation threaten to jam the gears of this finely tuned machine, risking delays, bottlenecks, and economic uncertainty. As of Christmas Eve 2025, a temporary truce is in place, U.S. port fees are postponed, and both sides have stepped back from the brink, at least for now. But the threat of new fees still looms large, hanging over ongoing negotiations as a powerful bargaining chip. The situation remains tense, and the outcome is far from certain. Understanding this standoff is key to grasping the challenges ahead for the global economy, and to preparing for a future where the rules of trade may be rewritten before our eyes. To understand why the U.S. is taking action now, we have to look back at how China transformed the global shipbuilding industry in just a few decades. China's meteoric rise in shipbuilding didn't happen overnight. It was the result of years of strategic planning, massive investment, and relentless ambition to become the world's shipbuilding powerhouse. Back in 1999, China produced just 5% of the world's ships, a minor player compared to established giants. Fast forward to today, and China now builds more than half of all ships globally, a staggering leap that has reshaped the industry. This transformation was no accident. The Chinese government funneled billions of dollars into its shipyards, providing subsidies, cheap loans, and direct support. This aggressive strategy allowed China to outcompete rivals in Europe, South Korea, and Japan, who struggled to keep up. The consequences were dramatic. Foreign shipyards closed their doors, and China emerged as the dominant force in global supply chains. As China surged ahead, U.S. shipbuilding quietly faded into the background. Once a post-war giant, America's shipyards now produce fewer than 5 large commercial vessels a year, a shadow of their former glory. The decline has left the U.S. reliant on foreign ships for both trade and critical infrastructure. Today, the U.S. depends heavily on foreign and mostly Chinese ships to keep its economy moving. This reliance is increasingly seen as a vulnerability, raising alarms about both economic security and national defense. In response, 5 major U.S. labor unions have petitioned the government, arguing that China's state-driven tactics have hollowed out American industry and put American jobs at risk. While critics point to decades of U.S. policy decisions that allowed this decline, Washington now views China's model as a direct threat. One that can no longer be ignored. The world's 2 largest economies are now locked in a high-stakes contest over the ships that connect global trade, with each side determined to protect its interests. The balance of power at sea has shifted dramatically, and as tensions rise, the next chapter in this maritime rivalry is just beginning. In February 2025, the Biden administration unveiled a bold and controversial plan that sent shockwaves through the global shipping industry and international trade circles. The proposal, to impose steep new fees on Chinese ships docking at U.S. ports, targeting both the vessels themselves and the companies that operate them. The numbers were staggering, up to $1.5 million per visit for Chinese-built ships, and $1 million for any vessel operated by a Chinese company, regardless of where it was built. These fees would apply every single time a qualifying ship entered a U.S. port, multiplying the financial impact for frequent shippers. The administration's stated goal was twofold: to generate billions in new revenue that could be funneled directly into reviving the struggling U.S. shipbuilding industry, and to push back against what Washington has long described as decades of unfair Chinese trade and industrial practices that have eroded American competitiveness. The legal mechanism behind this move was a Section 301 investigation, a powerful tool in U.S. trade law, and the very same one used to justify sweeping tariffs during the last major trade war with China. By invoking Section 301, the U.S. signaled it was prepared to act unilaterally, even if it meant risking violations of global trade rules set by organizations like the World Trade Organization. This raised immediate concerns among international legal experts and trading partners. For shipping lines, the math was brutal: millions in new costs per vessel, per year, threatening to upend business models and force companies to rethink their global logistics strategies. This was a direct strike at the backbone of China's export machine, targeting the very ships and companies that power its global trade dominance. The global shipping industry was stunned by the scale and suddenness of the proposal, and all eyes turned to Beijing for a response, as analysts speculated about possible retaliation and the broader impact on world trade. Around the world, markets wobbled and business leaders braced for the next move in this high-stakes standoff, knowing that the consequences could ripple far beyond the shipping sector. China's answer came quickly and decisively, setting the stage for a new chapter in the ongoing economic rivalry between the world's two largest economies. Beijing wasted no time in hitting back. On November 10, 2025, China's Ministry of Transport suspended port fee reductions for all U.S.-flagged and U.S.-linked vessels for a year. The message: if the U.S. raises costs for Chinese ships, China will do the same for American ones. While not as costly as the U.S. proposal, it was a significant blow, raising expenses for U.S. shipping lines in China's massive ports. China's move was reciprocal and firm, but avoided dramatic escalation. Shipping companies were caught in the crossfire, facing higher costs and new uncertainty. The world watched as the two giants edged closer to a dangerous standoff. The port fee standoff sent shockwaves through global supply chains. Shipping companies scrambled to avoid the new U.S. fees, considering rerouting cargo through Canada or Mexico. This would mean longer transit times, higher costs, and new bottlenecks at North American borders. American ports, critical economic hubs, faced the threat of losing business, putting millions of jobs at risk. Ironically, a policy meant to protect U.S. industry could end up hurting port communities and workers. Meanwhile, China's retaliation squeezed U.S. shipping lines in Asia, giving European and Asian rivals an edge. The result: more uncertainty, higher risk, and a global shipping industry forced into reactive mode. The delicate balance of global trade was suddenly at risk. The world's supply chains had never felt so vulnerable. Trade wars rarely stay confined to governments and corporations, they hit your wallet too. Higher shipping costs mean higher prices for importers, retailers, and ultimately, consumers. Experts estimated the U.S. port fees could add up to $1,000 per shipping container. Multiply that by millions of containers, and the cost to consumers is staggering. Everyday goods, electronics, clothes, furniture could all get more expensive. Retailers would pass on the costs, fueling inflation and squeezing household budgets. A policy meant to pressure China could make life harder for American families. The hidden tax of a trade war is paid at the checkout line. In a global economy, no country is immune from the fallout. Just as the shipping world braced for chaos, the political winds shifted. The port fee fight was just one piece of a larger U.S.-China negotiation. In late 2025, both sides recognized the risk of all-out economic conflict and began to pull back. At an October summit in South Korea, the US agreed to reduce some tariffs, and China postponed export controls on rare earths. The US also delayed new tariffs on Chinese semiconductors and eased some tech export restrictions. Within this thaw, the US postponed the port fees for a year, putting the maritime conflict on hold. But postponed doesn't mean canceled. The threat remains a powerful bargaining chip. The truce is fragile, and the core issues are unresolved. The next move could reignite the conflict at any time. The US pitched port fees as a way to revive shipbuilding, but experts are skeptical. America's shipyard decline is a decades-old problem, rooted in policy shifts and lost industrial capacity. Rebuilding the industry takes more than money. It needs skilled workers, suppliers, and years of investment. Trade analysts warn that targeting shipping infrastructure is risky, creating global uncertainty and unintended consequences. The fee proposal looks more like a bargaining chip than a real plan for revival. For now, Washington keeps the threat in reserve, using it as leverage in talks with Beijing. The real challenge, crafting a long-term strategy to compete, not just retaliate. As a temporary peace settles over the world's oceans, the real issues remain unresolved. The US-China maritime standoff exposed deep anxieties about industrial decline and economic dependence. The proposed fees were dramatic, but risky, threatening to disrupt trade and spark retaliation. This episode is a warning. Economic conflict can quickly spill into new, dangerous territory. For now, the truce holds, but the threat of new fees lingers as a tool in future negotiations. Businesses and consumers face persistent uncertainty, navigating a shifting political landscape. The core issues, China's state subsidies and America's competitiveness, are still in play. The next phase may unfold quietly, but the stakes remain high for global trade and your wallet. The waters ahead are uncharted and potentially stormy. We'll be here to keep you informed.